Hi, boys and girls. Today we are going to read chapter 9 of A Tangle of Knots. Make sure to look at the recipe doc. There's another recipe, Toby's s'mores cake. If you happen to do one of the recipes with your family, make sure to send a picture to your teacher so that we can see it. Okay, let's read chapter 9. It's titled Toby. Something had happened on the highway. Train. Okay, train's gone. Something had happened on the highway. That's what they were saying on the radio. A hiker had fainted or fallen or some such thing, which had caused several fender benders, backing up traffic for miles. Which was why Toby now found himself turning unfamiliar corners in the fog. Toby had been making the same run to the airport every day for over a decade, purchasing the cast-off luggage that no one had come to claim so that the contents might be resold at the Emporium. And every one of those days, from dawn to dusk, had been more or less the same. Far from grand, but not too horrible either. Like a pebble underneath your sock that's not quite large enough to bother removing. Today it seemed was different. Toby had never had such a huge haul from an airport run before. And there had even been one of those old powder blue suitcases, a St. Anthony's, which ought to make the old man happy. That would be a sight, Toby thought to himself. Toby had settled the St. Anthony's next to him in the passenger seat of his truck for safekeeping. And that's where it should have stayed, except that, while Toby was turning another corner into the gray fog, the suitcase tumbled to the floor of the truck. Toby reached over to tug it back onto his seat, his eyes drifting from the road for just one moment. Which, as it happened, was just long enough. Toby slammed on his brakes. Standing not 10 inches from his front bumper was a pixie of a girl with crow-black hair. Who is it? In her hand was a plate of cake, her fork frozen halfway to her face as she stared at Toby through the windshield. A young woman, tall and thin, rushed over and grabbed the girl by the shoulders. "Katie," she cried, "are you okay?" Toby was parked in the middle of a damp green lawn. Another little girl, much younger than the first, sat in the front of a deck of cards at a picnic table covered with a polka dot cloth. A friendly-looking couple beside her. In the distance, Toby could just make out the hazy outline of the sign on the lawn's edge. Where do you think they are right now? Of course, they're at Miss Mallory's home for lost girls. I'm fine, the girl told the woman, who must have been Miss Mallory herself. The girl blinked. He just appeared. With the tines of her fork, she gestured to Toby through the windshield, right out of the fog. Toby felt his face flush as he studied the girl standing before him. Could it possibly? He shook his head clear of wild thoughts, quickly unbuckled his seatbelt, and leapt from the truck. "I'm so sorry," he said. "I don't know what happened." When Miss Mallory first opened her mouth to respond, Toby was certain she was going to shout at him. And he wouldn't have blamed her. But to his surprise, she seemed to change her mind. With one hand clutched to her chest, she gave him a sharp nod. "Would you like to join us for some cake?" she asked, taking the black-haired girl's hand in her own. "We'd be happy to have you." Toby began, his head turned halfway toward his truck. The engine was still running. "I don't know if I..." "Oh, please do," the girl Katie said. "I made the cake myself. It's delicious." And at that, Toby smiled. It was a real and true smile, the kind he hadn't felt in a long, long time. "Of course I will," he replied. He turned off his truck and took a seat at the picnic table near the front door, nestled between a bed of petunias on the left and a bed of pansies on the right. Miss Mallory handed him a plate of cake. Each crumb looked moist and rich and heavenly. "I'm Jennifer Mallory," she introduced herself. "Toby Darlington," he replied, which was only partly a lie. Why is Toby lying? "Do you have a talent?" the younger girl asked him from the far end of the table. "Mine's licking envelopes. I can do 20 in 8 seconds, no paper cuts." Amy, dear, don't talk with your mouth full, the woman who must have been Amy's mother admonished. And we don't ask people about their talents. It's rude. It's okay, Toby replied. I don't have a talent, he told Amy. I'm fair. What is this pup doing? Oh, my Lord. Sorry, that's Zeke. I'm fair, which was absolutely a lie. Across the table, Toby noticed Katie studying him carefully. He felt for a moment that she was looking right through him, right to the very depths of who he was. Toby wasn't entirely certain that anyone had ever looked at him that way before. Is everything all right? He asked her kindly, raising the fork to his mouth. Oh, I was just trying to see what kind of cake you are, Katie replied, offering an embarrassed little grin before taking a small nibble of cinnamon cake herself. Toby raised an eyebrow. What kind of cake I am? You're perfect cake, she said by way of explanation. Usually I can tell as soon as I meet someone. Like Amy's mom there is a pineapple upside-down cake, and her dad is a sour cream coffee cake with a crumbly blueberry center. Here, Amy's father raised his polka dot cup of milk in the air and cheered as though to confirm that this was indeed his perfect cake. But with you, Katie closed her eyes. For some reason, it's a little harder. Toby shifted in his seat. Katie propped her eyes open. I guess I'll just have to think on it some more, she said. And the way her face lit up, she looked a bit like a baby bird who just discovered there was sunlight in the world. Toby took another bigger bite of cake and began to settle into himself. Somehow, in this place, he felt happier, calmer than he had in quite some time, as though perhaps the pebble in his shoe had managed to work its own way out. It was a very nice sort of feeling. He was finishing up his last bite of cake when Miss Mallory leaned over and whispered in his ear. Just let me know when you're ready to fill out the paperwork, she told him. I'll be so sorry to let her go, but... Her gaze drifted across the table to Katie, giggling with Amy as they slapped playing cards down on the polka dot cloth, and she set her hand over her heart again. I can't say I didn't feel you coming. Toby swallowed. Sorry, he said. Miss Mallory turned her focus back to him. That is why you came, isn't it? She asked, to adopt Katie. Toby felt the oddest sensation then, as though every emotion he'd ever had, happiness, sadness, worry, surprise, was colliding inside his body, battling to see which one of them might win. It was not so different from the sensation he'd felt once long ago in that tiny village in Africa when he'd been a very different man. For just 1 second, Toby was sure that his face had betrayed him, but he managed to shift everything back in place just in time. You do want to adopt her, don't you? Miss Mallory asked, studying him carefully. Across the table, Katie laughed again, slapping down another card, and in that moment, Toby knew. He'd give anything to be a father again. I'd love to adopt Katie, he said. And that was not a lie at all. What connection do you guys think Toby has to Katie? Is there something deeper here? Think about that. And isn't it strange that Katie has trouble figuring out the perfect cake for Toby? And I want you to also think about how Toby is feeling about what Miss Mallory says about adopting Katie. Is this all a coincidence that he just ended up at the orphanage? Or is there more to it? Good chapter. Okay, guys, have a great day.